At the conclusion of Raw on August 18th, Roman made a comeback to save Jey Uso and assist him in winning. It sounded as though Bronson Reed vs. Roman Reigns at Clash in Paris was confirmed right now, even though it wasn't verified on a live microphone. Roman can be heard shouting at Bronson Reed about how he fights for titles rather than shoes. He was also informed by Bronson Reed that he would be bringing the shoes that Roman was wearing to Paris. Thus, Roman's participation in Clash in Paris is confirmed. A match versus Bronson Reed in singles. Given that Roman's most recent singles match was for the Raw Netflix premiere back in January, this is an unusual one. Roman's nearly 9-month gap between singles bouts is really crazy. In between, there were tag team matches and triple threats. And it leads us to the second section of this discussion about Roman Reigns, which is about his dubious use in 2025. We have discussed this topic previously, back when the story of the Bronson Reed stolen sneakers initially began. But what the devil happened to Roman Reigns' character-driven, plot-driven version? Roman Reigns was a character that took pride in a cinematic universe of narrative from August 2020 until 2024. Roman had a complex and profound backstory for everything he said and did. The most exceptional narrative character the firm has encountered in recent years. However, it seems like that persona has vanished entirely in recent memory and has lost all that made him unique. He is no longer surrounded by any truly profound stories. What's the narrative behind this forthcoming singles match versus Bronson Reed? Roman's stolen shoes appear to be the primary motivator of that fight and plot, which again goes against Roman's prior story standards. Having a complete feud centered around stolen sneakers seems strange for Roman of all people. And there have been many stories like that in WWE lately, where a heel seizes a tangible object that belonged to the babyface. We saw the similar story with Drew McIntyre, and the main focus of the tale was how he took CM Punk's wristband. Next, the story's main focus was on Solo's theft of the Ula Fala and his subsequent concealment of it from Roman. And now that Bronson Reed is robbing Roman Reigns of his footwear parade, we're witnessing that structure being utilized once more. The stolen sneakers are arguably the weakest of those three stories, despite the fact that the plot structure has been used a lot recently. And that's about all there is to say about Roman and Bronson Reed. Roman stated out loud that he is not battling him over the shoes, yet according to the narrative, the only thing causing this conflict at the moment is the stolen shoes. Fans have also criticized Roman's use on WWE television in general, in addition to the flimsy plot involving Bronson Reed. It felt unique and was a must-see event when Roman Reigns made an appearance during the Bloodline era. There are numerous facets to whatever Roman was doing on any given week, and you know that if he were on the show, you would be getting a piece that would be the most discussed and examined of the week. However, none of that is true anymore either. Because Roman Reigns is being used in a bland and repetitious manner, his televised performances no longer seem nearly as good as they once did. Almost all of Roman's televised appearances since the evening of WrestleMania 41 in April have been run-ins to end the show. If Roman is scheduled to appear on a show today, you can anticipate exactly how he will look and be used in that particular episode. Roman always makes an appearance for a run-in beatdown in the last moments of a Raw program. He may win or lose the beatdown moment, but that's all there is to it. Not opening the show, not doing something different every week, not doing many promotions, run-ins for each appearance at the end of the show, and because there is no plot and only innumerable run-in segments at the end of every show that don't really add up to much, Roman Reigns' appearances have changed from being this huge special event that you just had to see to being pretty much boring and lacking anything to really analyze. It's similar to Brock Lesnar in the late 2010s. When WWE booked a megastar like Brock Lesnar for television, they encountered criticism from fans who felt that because they didn't do anything with him during such appearances, Brock's visits ceased to feel special. After a few minutes of Brock jogging in place, Paul Heyman spoke, and then it was rinse and repeat. And now it seems like Roman Reigns is gradually moving into the same area where a megastar is scheduled to perform. But his use is monotonous, cliched, and repetitious. There is no longer any mystery about Roman's arrival on a show. If he is scheduled to perform, You can be sure he will turn up in the last few minutes of the show. That's it. It's terribly monotonous, repetitive, and draining. Roman's appearances on the shows are somewhat bizarre, but because of their dubious usage and weak plot, there is just nothing to discuss. It's strange that they're making Roman Reigns' appearances seem so flat and uninteresting, but perhaps they don't want to do anything in depth with him right now because he will be leaving again soon. Therefore, that is the topic of conversation right now regarding Roman Reigns. Hopefully, his usage will improve soon as it is now a little erratic. Bayley's WWE career has had a difficult few months, filled with nothing but negative highlights. Due to her friendship with Lyra disintegrating and missing those important live events, Bayley has essentially had a mental collapse. Although Bayley hasn't been seen on Raw in person in a few weeks, they have been playing her a pre-recorded interview each week that ends on a cliffhanger and is repeated the following week. Bayley heard her heel voice in her head as the first segment of this conversation came to a conclusion. In any case, Raw's August 18th episode picked up right where the interview left off. Her heel self's voice makes fun of Bayley for her current lack of focus and how nothing she has been doing lately makes sense. Heel Bayley claims that he is a loser without her. Heel Bayley supports her claim by stating that they were a double champion and the longest reigning SmackDown Women's Champion in history when Bayley embraced her. Additionally, Bayley counseled her to avoid making any friends because they would constantly betray her. Damage Control, Becky Lynch, and even Sasha Banks provided examples of that. Everyone with whom Bayley had a close relationship eventually betrayed her. Heel then, Bayley makes fun of her for skipping SummerSlam and WrestleMania. The heel voice keeps trying to persuade Bayley to pay attention, but eventually Bayley shuts the sound out. As the video fades to black and Bayley says she doesn't know what she needs, her inner voice asks if she wants an embrace, and that's where it ends. Thus, the second portion of this interview concluded similarly to the first, with a cliffhanger that seems to hint at the following section. We watched the entire conversation unfold in the second section after the previous one concluded with the heel Bayley voice being teased. However, when the second one comes to a close, NXT Hugger Bayley's voice is teased and alluded to. So, heel after listening to that voice, Bayley stated her case for being heard, explaining how they were a double champion and had achieved such great accomplishment. It appears that Hugger Babyface will be included in part 3 of this interview, which airs on August 25th. Bayley presents her argument for why Bayley ought to pay attention to her instead. Heel, it's time for NXT Bayley to make some strong arguments of her own after she made hers. Along with being a champion, that version of Bayley is what made her famous on the internet and gave rise to some of her greatest matchups ever. Therefore, Hugger Bayley could discuss all of those topics in part 3 of the interview, attempting to persuade Bayley that perhaps they might relive some of the magic from her NXT days and early main roster days prior to her 2019 heel turn if she remains positive and perhaps adopts the Hugger persona. Thus, Babyface, the heel half of her brain, is attempting to drive her in that direction, but now her babyface side is tugging her in a completely different direction, so Bayley will undoubtedly put in a lot of effort to try to win this internal conflict. The character is currently experiencing a lot of mental turmoil. Furthermore, it's quite feasible that Bayley will have a complete breakdown and go insane as a result of these interviews. Although it appears that she is making an effort to quiet the voices, they are becoming louder and more powerful. How long before Bayley's mental state entirely breaks down as a result of this? That seems like a real possibility in this case. Perhaps Bayley doesn't completely return to her 2020 self or the Hugger gimmick. Instead, she becomes a hybrid of the two personalities. However, keep in mind that R-Truth is also being used for that. So would they really have two superstars running the split personality characteristics simultaneously? That's the major question right there. Although many professional wrestlers have followed the split personality method, and there have been multiple cases where it has shown to be effective. Therefore, if Bayley actually has a complete breakdown and tries to be both the Hugger Bayley and the Ding Dong Bayley, it seems like things may get messy, but depending on how they handle her, she also sounds like a pretty interesting and multifaceted character. It appears that Bayley is torn between her two most prosperous periods, each of which is attempting to drag her back in its own way. Hugger Bayley now wants another chance to be seen, while heel Bayley wants to be freed once more. This interview series has provided a distinctive means of illustrating and subtly hinting at Bayley's character transformation. In a few weeks, this interview series may come to an abrupt conclusion, but it will pave the way for Bayley's on-screen comeback, which might be the pivotal moment when we learn what she wants to accomplish. Will she give in more to the babyface side or the heel side? Many fans believe that this war within Bayley will ultimately be won by the heel side. In any case, the next 2 weeks will be quite fascinating to watch what Bayley's significant payout turns out to be.